Zoe Simmons. My mind was wrapped up in the thoughts about my fiancé, John, as I walked into the large auditorium that we used for pack meetings. Here at the Silver Moon Pack, we are always accepting new members and attempts to grow our pack. It was one of the few things we did that made our pack different from others. Some of the surrounding packs thought of us as the pack of misfits, but that didn't stop my father from being the welcoming man that he was. Being the ex-beta's daughter of the pack had its perks, but also downfalls. I bowed my head and thought, when I turned 16, I expected to meet my amazing wolf, but to everyone's surprise, she was a no-show. Yet at 18, I was still human. No wolf. No shift. Just silence where my other half should be. A rustle in the distance made me tense, but before I could react, a deep voice cut through the icy morning air. Zoe. I turned to see John, my boyfriend, standing at the edge of the trees. His usual warm smile was gone, replaced by something unreadable. He stood stiffly, his eyes shadowed. I want to kiss him, but he just hugged me. He hesitated. Please sit down. There's someone you need to meet. Something was wrong. I could feel it deep down. And as I followed him back toward the pack house, I had no idea my world was about to fall apart. There were many esteemed members of the pack. Some lower status wolves, and I joined for certain announcement meetings only, like today. Once the Alpha and Luna of our pack arrived with a guest, the meeting started. We all sat in specified seats. Due to my status being lower and my lack of a wolf, I sat farther down the table, while John, being the new beta, sat to the right of the Alpha and Luna, who were at the head of the table. The guest sat beside John. She was introduced to be sister of the Alpha of an important ally pack, the Blood Crescent Pack. She was sent to bring the two packs closer together and act as a bond between the packs. Her name was Alyssa. Alyssa was a gorgeous 23-year-old bleached blonde girl with a perfect hourglass figure accentuated by her tight black tube dress that showed off her beautiful legs. She had walked in perfect heels like a runway supermodel. The meeting began and the topics shifted from one to the next according to their importance. Despite being comfortable in my relationship, I couldn't help but notice how John leaned in to talk to Alyssa throughout the meeting. The way he smiled when he talked to her softly to avoid disrupting the meeting. The way he looked at her legs and dress. I was not insecure, but I knew I'd rather talk to him when we got home today. He had to stay at the pack house till late for some work, so I returned home alone. I had a plan. I went to my room and chose the red lace lingerie that Maisie, my best friend, had chosen for me when I had first gone out with John years ago. That was before I knew I had not been granted a wolf. John and I had been together for years, but he had never shown too much affection. I always thought he wanted to wait and see if we were mates, which could only happen when I got my wolf. We had kissed many times before, but never slept together, even though we lived in the same house. I was going to change that today. I put on some makeup and attached my long sexy stockings with a garter belt. The dress and I were ready. I waited on the couch for John to come home. He came back late. I sat up straight as I heard his keys in the door. I was ready to surprise him and see his reaction. He walked in and glanced once at me. Nodded with I'm going to my study, don't disturb. I was so upset. I knew I was not you, Gel. Why? I had several boys ask me for prom the day it was announced. And since then, I have to keep telling boys who approach me that I am taken. Surely that accounted for something. John had locked his study door like always. Since he became the new beta of the pack, he had been spending all his evenings in the study and only came to sleep after I had already gone to bed. But I had had enough. So I dared to sneak closer to his study door. I didn't want to be caught eavesdropping, but when I heard him talk inside, I had to hear it. Be patient. I'll stay with you this whole weekend and I'll see you tonight. Alyssa. John was definitely talking on the phone. Wait, did he say Alyssa? Was it the same Alyssa who had joined our pack today? The gorgeous one we met at the meeting? The one John couldn't keep his eyes off of? I had a pit in my stomach. Something was very wrong. I barely made it back to the living area and plopped on the couch. It couldn't be true, right? John loved me. He had been with me despite the fact that I didn't get my wolf at 16. For years ago, 5 minutes later, he walked out of the study, hair combed and clad in a new shirt. I've got some business to attend tonight. You are on your own for dinner." And just like that, he grabbed his keys and left. I was stunned. What had happened? My mind was creating awful scenarios. John was loyal to me all these years. I hadn't given him any reason to act otherwise. I had been expecting to get engaged in a year or two. I paced the living room, tense. Something went off in my head. I made a decision. If John were to act suspiciously, I would do what is done to suspicious people. I rushed to grab my keys. On the spur of the moment, I made the bold decision to follow my boyfriend. I kept telling myself that once I saw John meeting with elders of the pack or his friends for whatever business, I'd feel better and could come back to cook something for a solo dinner. I followed John's car to a hotel and waited as he stepped out of his car. In less than a minute, a tall blonde rushed at him and jumped right into his arms. He held her and spun her around before placing her on the floor and kissing her like he had never kissed me before. The night's cold air nipped at my skin through my thin dress, but I didn't care. My blood was boiling. I walked closer to confirm that it indeed was Alyssa from the meeting today. "John," I shouted to get their attention. I didn't care how ridiculous I looked. John was clearly not expecting to see me. The surprise on his face was the confession of his guilt. "What are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his hands flippantly on Alyssa's perfect ass in front of me. Tears burned my eyes as I asked in a desperate tone, "Is this what your business is?" I tried to hold my tears until I was alone. "John, do you know her?" Alyssa asked, placing a hand on his chest, the one that I was rarely allowed to touch for years. "Lyssa, it's not what you might be thinking. This girl and we're just friends." John lied blatantly on my face, and I was shocked to bear witness to the side of him. Don't get the wrong idea by what she is wearing. She is going through some stuff. Must have gotten upset when I couldn't be there to help her. He had the audacity to twirl a stray lock of her blonde hair around his finger as I stood watching in shock. "Oh, in that case, hi. I'm Alyssa. I think I remember you from today's meeting. You were sitting at the back right." The man-stealing by TCH smiled, and it stung like a viper. She extended a hand as an offer to shake mine, and I glared at it. John squirmed as I refused to shake hands with the woman he cheated on me with. I glared at him, holding back the tears pooling in my eyes. I scoffed. "Oh, that's your genius idea?" A quick bang in a hotel room. John got in my face and gripped my shoulders so tight that I winced. "Lower your king voice. We don't need other members hearing this." He paused. "Misunderstanding." At that moment, I saw red and completely lost my mind. "Misunderstanding?" I screamed. "Enough." John pressed out his beta aura, making me snap out of my rage. Regardless that I was the former beta's daughter, John was still above me in rank and could make me submit, leave, or I'll make you and you won't like the way I'll do it. I stood there speechless as he scolded me, his 5-year-long girlfriend for this new chick, who had just joined the pack, but I wouldn't go down that easily. I stood tall and craned my neck up so I could meet his eyes. John was a good 10 inches taller. I pushed my pointer finger at his body. "We are done." Final words delivered. I turned and left. My heart was shattered into pieces. The one I had imagined to be my one and only had pushed me down and stomped all over me with his new girl. Didn't I at least deserve a proper breakup? A reason for why he was doing this to me. I hadn't meant to cry, but his actions and his words stung too much. Each word was like a knife in my heart. I cried despite myself. I thought I was strong, but not more than heartbreak. Without another word, I turned and rushed back home. Everything was clear. I had been the blind one. That night I cried myself to sleep, woke up at midnight. No ice cream could ease the pain of my broken heart. I kept asking myself, how could I have loved such a heartless person? By morning I had no motivation to ever leave my bed. My eyes were swollen from all the crying. My phone rang. It was my best friend and neighbor, Maisie, calling me. She never called me this early. It was barely morning. I reluctantly picked up the phone. "Zoe, did you hear it?" "Hear what?" I asked groggily. "OMG, you don't know." "Don't know what?" I asked, nearly snapping at her for making me solve riddles. "Your dad, Uncle Simmons, What happened to my dad? I sat up. The panic in her voice made me anxious. Zoe, some men came at night and arrested him for some huge embezzlement from the PAC's finances. He will be sent to the dungeon soon. What? I screamed at my phone. That was impossible. My dad and embezzlement couldn't be in the same sentence. No freaking way. I just saw him yesterday and he was perfectly fine, I shouted. Zoe, love, I know it must have come as a shock dash. I will contact him now. I immediately text my dad. It was possible that it was all just one big misunderstanding and my sweet, kind, responsible, and well-respected dad still lay sleeping his retirement away peacefully in his bed. We live in the same neighborhood, girl. And when the men came, my dad went to check. He returned making sure that the men had the PAC's emblem on them. They sounded very serious. Even my dad was scared for a while. You know what? I gotta go, I told, as I cut off the call and jumped into the shower. Heartbreak be Dan med. My father needed me. I quickly took off my embarrassing reminder of last night and cleaned myself up to go to the PAC house at once. If my dad truly had been arrested, that's where they'd be keeping him, and that's where I would find everyone responsible for it too. In about an hour. I was driving fast towards the upper part of the town where the PAC house was. I rushed in and was met with one of the elders talking to a guard. Make sure he is well guarded. Any slip-up will be punishable by death. He may be old, but he was a beta. Be extra careful until he is shifted to the dungeons. And just like that, I knew what Maisie had told me was true. Of course, they could have been talking about another prisoner, but the coincidence was uncanny. Sir, I need to see my father. Where is he? You know he didn't do what he is being framed for doing. I started as soon as the guard left. The elder, Mr. Wyatt, used to be a close friend of my dad. He shook his head in disdain, and my heart broke. Sir, you know he would never dash. Zoe, my child, I understand that it must be a shock, but there is proof against your father having embezzled of $10 million from PAC finances. As you can understand, it is no small amount. It cannot be excused. With that, he led me to a room with many guards around the entrance. Your father is here. Say your goodbyes, you might not get another chance. This could not be it. I was in denial of everything the elder had told me, but I was grateful to him for letting me talk to my father. He told the guards to allow me through. I opened the door and saw him chained to a wall post in someone's study, a makeshift prison for my dad. The moment he saw who it was, he spoke with urgency. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, Zoe. I'm being framed. I know, Daddy. I know. I rushed to hug him and saw that he had been crying. How could he not? His lifetime of earning respect got ruined in one night due to a cruel lie. But who would frame you like this? I asked desperately. I didn't know how much time I had, but it couldn't be long. John did it. He did it and framed me. He came here and confessed. Made it look like he found out about it when he came to the office as my successor. Created all the proof. No one would believe me if I called him out. He knows only the Werewolf Council can find out the truth, and they have no reason to meddle in the PAC's private affairs like these. My father had fresh tears brimming in his eyes, and it made me tear up too. How could I be so blind to never see who John really was? Zoe's POV after my conversation with my father, I immediately went to look for John. Since he was the beta, he was often at the PAC house's office wing. I was hoping to find him there today as well. I stepped into his office without knocking and found him sitting in his big chair like he owned the world, a glass of champagne in his hands so early in the morning. What's the occasion for this early celebration? I asked, upset. Heartbreak was one thing, but he had also attacked my only family. This was not the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago. Who allowed you to come in? You, like everyone else, need an appointment for a trip to the beta's office. You can't just drop in like this. John stood up, daring to act disrespectfully. Why are you doing this? I asked, my mind racing but struggling to find the right words. My heart was shattered, and the frustration made it hard to think straight. What am I doing? He leaned against the big wooden table, acting like he had no idea what I was talking about. What did we ever do to you for you to pull this crap? My dad didn't steal that money, and you know it. So why are you setting him up? I almost shouted. He gently placed his glass on the table and then marched towards her in anger, grabbed me roughly by my arms, and pulled me closer to growl in pure malicious anger. Lower your damn voice. Then pushed me away to claim, I did not do anything yet. He circled back to his desk and picked up his glass, toasting to my misery. You were only a stepping stone. Love. Don't take it personally. I had to become the beta. You were ex-beta's daughter. It was all fun and games. My chosen mate could not be anyone less than alpha blood. Someone like Alyssa. She is pretty, belongs to a strong family, and most importantly, she is the daughter of the alpha of her pack. The one with the alpha blood who could give me alpha-blooded pups. He sipped in triumph as I staggered back, but then, why frame my dad? I whispered in disbelief. Why? Well, isn't it obvious? I needed money to woo my lady, and somebody had to take the fall, right? But he wasn't done yet, by the way. I have some good news to share. He went to open a drawer from his desk, took out a card, and handed it to me. I was going to send it to you by mail, but since you are already here, you might as well take it now. I opened the card to find out that it was an engagement invitation for John and Alyssa's wedding in a few days. That was the last straw. With my blood boiling, I gave in to my intrusive thoughts, gathered my courage and pain, and slapped him hard on his cheek. For a second, he was too stunned to react. Without waiting for him to respond, I marched out of the room, barely holding in my rage and pain. All the way home, I kept thinking about ways I could save my father from going to the dungeons from where no one had ever returned. He had told me that only the Werewolf Council could find out the truth. I kept planning on how and when to beg the council to start an honest investigation into my father's unjust arrest. As I reached home, my phone rang. It was Maisie. Hey, girl. You cut off the call so abruptly in the morning. I was so worried. Hey. Yeah, sorry to worry you. I went to the Pack house to confirm everything. And it's all true. John broke up with me last night. He had been cheating on me with the new girl Alyssa, and he embezzled the Pack finances and framed my dad. We have no proof. That backstabbing bastard. I'm coming to your house now. Thank you. Honorable, in a few minutes, the two of us were sitting in my lounge where Maisie had big information for me. The Werewolf Council will be at John and Alyssa's engagement party, Maisie said urgently, grabbing my arm. Alyssa's brother is rumored to be both a council member and an alpha of a key ally pack. This is our chance. I stiffened. To do what? Get myself killed. To clear your father's name. Maisie's nails dug into my skin. The council actually listens to allied alphas. If we can get proof of John's crimes to Alyssa's brother, the ice in my drink cracked as I clenched the glass. Images flashed, my father's bloody cell, John's smug smile when they dragged me from the pack. They'll tear me apart on sight, I whispered. Not if we use this. Maisie slid a silver invitation across the table. Alyssa sent it by mistake. She wants to gloat. Let her. The engraved letters blurred as I traced John's name. Every instinct screamed run. Then I heard my father's last words before the arrest. Truth survives where wolves don't. Fine, let's go there, I said, snapping the invitation shut. Despite myself and my pain, I decided to attend the engagement. Hashtag finally. It was the day of engagement. John had not called or even texted me since our breakup. It was like he didn't need time to move on since he never truly cared for me. I was the only one stupid enough to believe his lies. I chose an elegant, backless, knee-length, black dress that accentuated my waist and flattered my lean figure, hugging my upper body and flowing like a flower downwards. I put my hair to a side, showing off my undercut on one side of my head, and wore glittery black high heels that pulled focus to my long legs. I applied light makeup and was ready to go on my mission to save my father. I had refused to sit and cry for an a-hole like John. I had chosen to lock my pain and use it later to make sure he felt the same as he had made me feel. Despite all my preparations, when John slid his ring on Alyssa's perfect finger and then kissed her in front of the clapping audience, it still hurt me. I turned around and headed straight for the bar, ordering myself a neat whiskey. I needed to drown my sorrows. One after another, I downed the drinks until I couldn't see clearly. I saw John in the distance and decided to give him a piece of my mind. I stumbled in his direction, but instead bumped into someone and was headed for the ground, but the stranger enveloped me in his arms and saved me from falling down. I looked up, apologizing, into his stormy gray eyes and felt instantly drawn to him. The mysterious stranger, wearing an expensive tux and an alluring cologne, steadied me on my feet before looking me up and down, assessing me. "Care to join me for a drink?" he asked, as if this dull evening could be slightly salvaged by spending a moment with me, the girl who looked so out of place. "Sure," I replied without thinking. If John could cheat on me with another woman, why couldn't I have a drink with this handsome stranger? His jawline was so sharp it could cut through steel. Even though I'd already had more to drink tonight than I ever had in one sitting, it still wasn't enough to numb the pain. Not even close. He led us to the bar, and I ordered the same thing I'd been drinking all night. Whiskey neat. "A woman of class, I see," he remarked, ordering the same for himself. When the drinks arrived, he reached out to slide my glass closer to me. That's when I noticed the edge of a tattoo sleeve peeking out from under his tuxedo jacket. John didn't have tattoos. Not a single one. I'd even told him once how much I liked them, how I'd wanted us to get matching ones. Now, I was glad we never did. It would have hurt even more to see that reminder of him. I took a large sip from my glass, my eyes flickering over to him. That's when I caught sight of a shiny pin on his coat. It read, "Werewolf Council, Alpha Shaw." Zoe's POV. The tag brought some unpleasant feelings in me. I felt like I needed to be angry. That there was something I needed to say to anyone who belonged to the Werewolf Council. I leaned over as if to tell a secret, but found that he was already leaning toward me. One of his hands was covering mine that was holding the glass on the counter. His other hand came to tip my chin upwards for a better angle. A tingle ran down my spine. He was slow, allowing me to move away if I wanted to. But it only made me want to do it more. When his lips brushed mine, the spark that we felt at the touch was undeniable. He leaned in and captured my mouth as I allowed him entrance. One of my hands absent-mindedly landed on his TGH that was between my legs as we sat facing each other on the bar stools. We kissed for what felt like forever. I didn't care what anyone at the party thought. He finally pulled away, and I was left breathless. My mind was a mess of emotions. Without thinking, I whispered, "John." I didn't mean to say it, but he heard me. Of course he did. His face changed instantly. He went from sweet and sexy to shocked. "Are you John's ex-girlfriend?" he asked, his voice sharp. My face burned. I hadn't meant to say John's name. I hadn't meant to ruin this. But here I was, drunk and heartbroken, making out with a stranger at my ex's engagement party. And I'd called him by the wrong name. "I'm sorry," I stammered. I don't know why I said that. Tears filled my eyes. I didn't care if I looked pathetic. The whiskey had taken away all my logic. Then my phone rang. It was Aunt Julie, our housekeeper. Her voice was frantic. My stomach dropped. "Aunt Julie, is everything okay?" I slurred. "Miss Zoe, someone dropped a notice at the house. It says your father will be sent to the dungeon soon. What are we going to do?" She sounded scared. Julie had been with our family forever. This wasn't just about my father, it was personal for her too. The call sobered me up. "I'm coming home now," I said that I needed to be home. There was no point staying at this party. John didn't care about me. I was too drunk to help my father. I stumbled to my feet and headed for the exit. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside. I looked for my car, even though I knew I shouldn't drive. A sleek car pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down. It was him, the man from the bar. "Let me drive you home," he said. "You'll KLL yourself or someone else in the state." He was right. I wasn't thinking straight. I got into the passenger seat without a word. I tried to put on the seatbelt, but it was stuck. I tugged harder, but it wouldn't budge. "Ugh," I groaned. He leaned over. His cologne smelled like pine. For a second, I thought he might hug me, but he reached for the seatbelt. He pressed a button and guided it around me. His fingers brushed my chest as he clicked it into place. My breath caught. I wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or him, but my head was spinning. I rubbed my bare arms, trying to warm up. The car's heater was slow. Then something heavy and warm draped over my shoulders. He'd given me his coat. Underneath, he wore a white button-up shirt. His sleeves were rolled up, showing his tattoos. I'd always liked tattoos on men. His were perfect. The car ride was quiet. Winter scenery flew past the window. I pulled his coat tighter. It smelled like him, comforting and tempting. His hand rested on the gear shift. His fingers were close to my knee. A part of me wanted him to touch me. I glanced at him. His profile was strong. He radiated power. It was intoxicating. Then he caught me staring. My cheeks flushed. He smirked, and the car sped up. We pulled up in front of my house. I hadn't told him my address. How did he know? Thank you, I said, slurring. For the ride, the coat, and everything. He smiled faintly. I tried to take off his coat, but I couldn't figure it out. My fingers fumbled. Keep it, he said. I'll have my beta come get it later. I'm sorry, I mumbled. I've had a few really bad days. I'm not usually this drunk. I don't doubt that, he said. As I got ready to leave, he handed me a card. I took it, confused. It's my personal card, he said. Call me if you need help. I stared at the card. He didn't give these out often. But something about me made him want to see me again. I was just a heartbroken mess, but he saw something more. I went inside, his coat still on my shoulders. In my bedroom, I collapsed onto the bed. I looked at the card in my hand. It read, Alpha Xavier Shaw, Blood Crescent Pack. There was a silver crescent moon and a red howling wolf on it. I didn't know what to think. But one thing was clear. This night had changed everything. When I got home, I was startled to see Aunt Julie crying. She kept worrying. John is so heartless. He's so cruel. Your father supported him to become the next beta, and now he is going to send your father to the dungeons. Your honest father getting locked up for years, maybe a lifetime. It made me feel even worse. I sat up and wiped my tears angrily, but more took their place immediately. You know what? Everyone in the pack knew that John was going to get engaged to another woman and not me. But they knew she belonged to a powerful background and let everything happen. They know my dad is innocent. They have always respected him for his values and honor. But nobody said a word as John got dad locked up for a fraud he didn't commit. There has to be a way to save your father. Aunt Julie said as she placed a comforting hand on mine, maybe there is something that John wants so he would spare your father this humiliation. I thought for a moment. There was nothing to lose in making a call. I fetched my phone and dialed his number. The number that was once my favorite to call as I used to wait for its calls often. He picked up after a couple of rings. I could hear the party still going on behind him. He spoke like he was drunk, not on liquor, but on power and triumph, like he had gotten everything he wanted from life. I didn't see you leave. You didn't even congratulate my fiancé. Not cool of you, Zoe. He mocked. I looked at Aunt Julie and put the phone on speaker. I did not have the power to bear him alone. How will you spare my dad? You know he doesn't deserve this. There has to be a way. I tried in desperation. Of course, there is a way. I heard him step away from the party as the music and noise faded from the background. My heart leaped in my chest. Maybe all was not lost. Well, I asked impatiently, exchanging hopeful glances with my old housekeeper, so impatient. He was enjoying playing with my desperation. I nearly cussed at him, but kept my tongue in control until I had heard what he was planning. You know, a man can get bored after marriage. Once I marry Alyssa for power, you can become my ex-partner. No woman holds a candle to your body. Remember how badly you wanted me to have you just a week ago? You looked stunning in that red lingerie. Aunt Julie's jaw dropped as her eyes widened at the awful proposal. I was at a loss for words. How dare he? What do you say, gorgeous? You and I could still be together, just like you always wanted. I could hear the smirk in his voice. I knew you were a bastard. I never could have imagined you to be so shameless. How dare you even propose such a filthy thing? It's impossible to happen, and you know it. I was so upset I could barely form sentences. Zoe, Zoe, naive little Zoe. Don't blame me for reminding you that you called me to tell you a way to spare your father, who is expected to have at least a 10-year dungeon sentence. And 10 years is a very long time for an old werewolf in the pack dungeons. Not jail, the dungeon. Think about your father. No need for rash decisions. He spoke with such confidence, like he knew he had cornered me. I hated how evil he was. I will go to the Werewolf Council. I will ask them to launch a real investigation. They will prove my father's innocence. They will restore his honor. They will dash, can't do anything, love. Don't forget the alpha brother of my chosen mate is also on the Werewolf Council. Don't even think about bashing me there. You will end up joining your father. And we wouldn't want that, would we? Isn't becoming my mistress better than dying in the pack dungeons with your poor father? He was barbaric for this, and he knew it. He loved the power he had over me, but he didn't know I had a black card with silver writing of someone from the Werewolf Council who had been kind to me, given me his coat, dropped me home, and made sure I could contact him personally again. The spark that ignited when we kissed was just as real as his position shown off by the shiny pin on his coat. John didn't need to know that. He must have thought of my silence as defeat, because he laughed maliciously. I will wait for you, beg me. With that, he cut off the call. I sat in silence beside my housekeeper, staring at the phone contemplating. Aunt Julie burst out crying again. Please don't be his mistress. You deserve better than this fate. Would your father allow you to do this for him? Don't worry, Aunt Julie. I won't be taking this dish-a-bag's filthy offer. I thought I'd cry, but my heart felt like there was no more emotion. John's heartless act had taken my feelings, even that of pain and betrayal, and crushed them too, just like he had crushed my love. Now I had no more tears to waste on him. I needed help. Immediately, I ruffled the expensive coat and found the shiny pin on it, as well as the card with Xavier Shaw's address on it. I told Aunt Julie and immediately called myself a cab since I had left my car at the pack house parking due to being drunk. Strange, now that I had talked to John, I was so angry and determined that I didn't feel the alcohol. Or maybe my werewolf metabolism was kicking into overdrive, trying to flush everything out of my system. The cab stopped in front of the tallest hotel on the pack territory. I walked indoors as the valet opened the doors for me and I headed for the elevator. Once I pressed the floor number written on the card and started moving upwards, I realized I should have gone to the reception and informed him that I was coming. But it was too late now. As the elevator door dinged open, I noticed how high up I was. It was definitely a penthouse. How rich was this alpha to afford a penthouse for a short trip to attend an engagement at a fellow pack? I walked, still wearing my party dress and his coat. I reached his suite number and knocked on the door before my mind could overthink and make me get cold feet. After a few moments, the door opened to reveal a shirtless Xavier with a fuzzy white towel hanging loosely around his high PS, revealing his perfectly chiseled abs leading to his V-line. There were fresh drops of water dusting his naked torso as well as dripping from his wet hair, some locks sticking to his forehead. He looked at me surprised before a smirk formed on his lips as he leaned on his door casually. I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Oh boy, what have I gotten myself into? I should have felt cheap standing there in nothing but his coat, but the way his gaze turned darker, the way his mouth curved into that I know what you're thinking smirk, it sent a thrill straight through me. Looking for something? His voice was smooth, teasing, but there was a promise underneath it. I didn't answer. Just brushed past him, my shoulder barely grazing his chest, but even that tiny touch sent a jolt through me. His scent, warm, woodsy, all man wrapped around me, making it hard to think. I took a few steps before turning, my fingers going to the coat's belt. The air between us got heavy. Already undressing. His voice dropped, rough around the edges. I like a woman who gets to the point. My fingers hesitated, just for a second, but I held his stare. Who says I want anything from you? He laughed, low and knowing, and hell if it didn't curl heat low in my stomach. Don't you? Then he was right there, one arm locking around my waist, yanking me against him. His skin was hot under my hands, his body solid. And God, the way he felt, the electricity, the pull, it was impossible to ignore. His eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. Zoe, he murmured, like he was tasting the name. Pretty. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, his fingers traced up my spine, lighting every nerve on fire. I'd come here to forget. But pressed against him, I realized I wasn't here to erase John's touch, I was here to replace it. I tilted my chin up, daring him. His grip tightened, like he was holding back. The tension between us was a live wire, buzzing, ready to snap. Then his phone rang. The sound cut through the room like a knife. His jaw clenched, frustration flashing across his face before he let me go, the cold air hitting my skin where he'd been. 1 second, he growled. Stepping back, I swallowed hard, watching as he turned to pick up his phone, his muscles tensing as he read the caller ID. I casually glanced at his phone screen, pretending it was no big deal. But I was shocked when I saw who the message was from. Alyssa, John's fiancé. Shock slammed into me. My stomach twisted. First, she stole my boyfriend. Now she was calling Xavier? How many men did this woman need? Hey, everything all right? Xavier's voice was calm, concerned even. I stood frozen, torn between walking away to give him privacy or staying to eavesdrop. I wanted to hear this. Not coming back, he said firmly, eyes flicking to me. Got something important to handle. I frowned. He talked like they were close. Yeah, I know. Work stuff. He hung up and tossed his phone aside. I was lost in thought. My eyes raked his body shamelessly. His chiseled face like carved by the angels. His dark hair, the perfect opposite of his fair skin and gray eyes. His broad shoulders. I couldn't help but imagine digging my nails into them as he made me reach my climax, screaming his name. Subconsciously, I looked at his neck. For some reason, I was relieved beyond measure to see that there was no mark on it, which meant that he was not mated and didn't have anyone waiting for him back home. There were a lot of things I could tolerate in a man, but I drew the line at cheating. Cheating was what caused me and John to break up. That thought brought me to reality where Xavier was talking to John's fiancée like he cared for her and knew her for a long time. Okay, see you. He hung up after that and tossed his phone to the couch. Refocusing his attention on me, he smirked seeing that I was still there, but stopped as he saw the confused look on my face and understood that I had seen the caller ID on his phone, and it was the person on whose engagement party we had met for the first time. He didn't need to know that the one she had gotten engaged to was my ex. Sorry, that was my sister. She was looking for me. Xavier spoke up, trying to clear the air before I could get upset. Sister? Alyssa is Alyssa Shaw. I asked, my voice shaky. I couldn't believe it. He raised an eyebrow. Problem? Before I could process, his hands were on my waist, pulling me in. His lips hovered dangerously close. I panicked, shoving weakly at his chest. I can't, not now. Confusion flashed across his face. Guilt twisted my gut, but I wasn't ready. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. Are you only used to sleeping with John? I froze. He knew. He knew about John, about my past. I didn't know how much he knew, but it didn't matter. The fact that he brought it up felt like a slap in the face, but why he looked a bit sad and disappointed? I had no idea why he had that expression. He stepped closer, his eyes dark and intense. For a second, I thought he might kiss me anyway. Part of me wanted him to, but the other part, the part that was still raw from everything with John, pulled back. I couldn't do this. Not with him. Not now. I felt the need to make sure that he knew that John had never bothered to sleep with me even when a week before his engagement I had deliberately tried for it to happen. We have broken up. And to clarify, we never dashed. Do I look like I care? He stepped closer to me. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't realize why my heart was reacting to his closeness like this. I had just broken up from a very long-term relationship very badly. I could never catch feelings for a stranger so soon. It wasn't me. If he knew everything, Why wasn't he running for the hills? Why was I the one panicking? My pulse pounded. I wanted him, but my brain short-circuited. Too much. Too fast. Let's just not do this. I turned to leave. My phone buzzed. Against my better judgment, I looked. Where are you, my little Omega? John, perfect timing, asshole. Xavier's breath warmed my neck as he read over my shoulder. Seems someone's not over her ex. No shit. I bolted without another word. He didn't stop me, which stung more than it should that I didn't respond. How could I? I'd just ended things with John, and now I was caught between him and his fiancé's brother. It was too much. Once I was in my car, I noticed I was still wearing Xavier's coat. I'd meant to return it, but now it felt like a lifeline. I started the engine, deciding to return his coat later. Then I pulled into my driveway, and there was John, leaning against his car with that smug grin I used to love. Miss me, bitch. He grabbed my arm, yanking me close. You'll come crawling back. Be my mistress, or your dad rots. His words punched through me. The dungeons. The blackmailed, I wanted to scream, to fight back, but his words paralyzed me. He was right. My father didn't have much time left. The dungeons were waiting, and I had no way to save him. John smirked, clearly enjoying my despair. Xavier might have his fun with you, but in the end, you'll be mine. He shoved me away. I stumbled, barely catching myself before I fell into the snow. He got into his car and drove off, leaving me standing there, frozen in more ways than one. I stood there, staring at the empty spot where his car had been. Xavier had no reason to help me. Why would he? I was nobody, a powerless Omega with nothing to offer. The struggle felt pointless. But I couldn't give up. Not my legs grew too cold and I rushed inside. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door and found Aunt Julie crying, her eyes swollen. What happened, Aunt? Was John here? Did he do something to you? I asked in panic. Calm down, Zoe, she said, pulling me to sit. Please, tell me what's wrong, I begged. I'm just heartbroken about your father's case. I can't bear the thought of him in the dungeons. He's beyond saving, isn't he? She whispered. Her words crushed me. My dad was my whole world. I couldn't just sit and do nothing. Suddenly, I remembered how I'd left Xavier's suite. Why had I been so stubborn? He was Alyssa's brother, but he was also the only council member I knew. My situation was hopeless, and my overreaction had made it worse. Don't worry, Auntie. I'll fix this, I said, trying to reassure us both. That night, I stared at Xavier's coat. Last chance. Next morning, I dressed to impress. Red turtleneck, killer pants. If I was gonna beg, I'd look damn good doing it. I drove to the Werewolf Council headquarters an hour away. Xavier was my last hope to AT the front desk. I approached the receptionist. Hi, good morning. I'd like to book an appointment with Counselor Shaw. It's urgent, I said politely. She looked me up and down, her tone dry. Counselor Shaw isn't here today. No appointments. So, can I get the confirmation on the appointment? I asked again when she refused to move or reply the first time. Yeah, no. She said, confusing me as she checked her nails. Excuse me. I said, getting impatient. What was her problem? Counselor Shaw is not in the building. He didn't come to work today. So, there will be no appointment booking for today. She told me without even bothering to look at me again. I stood there shocked for a second. What else was there to do? How long do you intend to stand there? I told you he is not here. Go home or something. She said like I was the one annoying her. How rude. I turned to leave. That's when I glanced at the elevator that had just dinged and opened to reveal Xavier Shaw, handsome as ever stepping out of the elevator. Xavier hadn't noticed me. He was talking to a tall, stunning woman in a tight pencil skirt. Her blonde curls bounced as she walked beside him. She radiated confidence, but her gaze burned with hunger. She wanted him. She gripped his bicep with her manicured hand as they stopped near me. Thank you, Xavier, she purred. I couldn't have won my husband's inheritance without you. Xavier handed her a file. Your husband's case was weak. I barely intervened. She flipped her hair, exposing more cleavage. The council was stumped. You solved everything in a week. Xavier remained cool. Just doing my job. I admired his control, but her batting lashes made my blood boil. She dropped her voice. Let's celebrate. Drinks at my place. I nearly rolled my eyes. Was she serious? My chest tightened. Would Xavier say yes? I didn't really know him anymore. He didn't hesitate. I don't drink with clients. Besides, I have a date tonight. Her smile froze. Then Xavier turned and looked straight at me. My heart pounded. Had he known I was here? Hadn't planned this. I'd come unsure if he even wanted to see me. Yet now his gaze burned through me, like he'd strip me bare right here. The woman scowled at me, then stalked off. Xavier closed the distance between us. His presence was magnetic, and heat rolled off him, wrapping around me like a heavy cloak. He leaned in, his breath hot on my ear. That smirk, the one that wrecked me, curved his lips as he whispered, "Changed your mind."